Three levels of Canadian governments are looking southward and worrying about what may happen next on the tariff front. And they're reaching out to counterparts in the U.S. and working their connections. At the same time, they're also trying to reassure Canadians. It's a challenge, but some see a potential silver lining. The CBC's Karina Roman is on top of all of this and joins me live from Ottawa. So Karina, how is this crisis being turned into an opportunity for Canada?
Well, as the cabinet ministers we've been talking about, the energy minister, defense minister, industry minister, are in Washington, shoring up relations there, making the case again that tariffs would hurt both sides of the border. It's also an opportunity for Canadian governments and Canadian people to really look inwards at to what can be done, what we can be in control of, as opposed to leaving to the U.S. And the Prime Minister addressed this to some extent today as well at the big city mayors meeting, saying really this is more about, it's more than just about survival. Have a listen to what he had to say.
I think we've all been blown away by how Canadians have responded to the proposed tariffs from the United States. Canadians have shown just how much we love this great country of ours. We've shown that when our backs are up against the wall, we will all stand together for Canada. We will choose Canada. Over the next few weeks, we will need to keep that spirit up because we're not out of the woods yet. Because we don't just want to get through this challenging moment, we want to emerge from it stronger than ever before.
So that means working on long-standing issues that perhaps was always been talked about, but for whatever reason was put on the back burner. So to make Canada less vulnerable to the U.S., less dependent on the U.S., there's been a lot of talk about interprovincial trade and the barriers that have prevented it from being as profitable and beneficial and smooth and easy as it could be. And so now there's a real push on a focus on east-west as opposed to north-south. And that includes the resurrection of talk. Maybe it's not going to go anywhere, but of some energy projects that go in that direction as opposed to the other direction. So really all options on the table. In terms of those interprovincial trade barriers, you've got the provinces and the premiers really much on board, at least that's what they're saying. So we'll have to see if that turns into action. But the minister responsible for that, Anita Anand, saying, that it's a palpable moment and that there's a real surge for that. And you also see that the whole new Buy Canadian push is not just for individual Canadians. Governments are talking about doing that as well. Have a listen to NDP leader Jagmeet Singh on that.
What we would do is change our procurement rules. We need to make sure that if we're spending public money, any public money, that it goes towards Canadian companies, Canadian contracts that hire Canadian workers, particularly unionized workers who are well paid. This is very important. If we spend our public money, it should go to Canadian workers, Canadian jobs, unionized jobs. We also have a lot of infrastructure projects. In those infrastructure projects, we need to require Canadian content. Thinking about steel and aluminum, we make it in Canada. Let us ensure that when we build, we're using Canadian content.
So there's also an economic summit tomorrow that the Prime Minister has convened between business leaders, union leaders, public policy experts to really focus the mind on all these internal things that Canadians can do. But of course, there's been a lot of talk as well about diversification of our export markets. And in that vein, the Prime Minister is actually headed to Europe, to Paris and Brussels, where he will obviously be trying to shore up European alliances. But there'll be other leaders there as well from other regions of the world, including the Indo-Pacific, which has been a very big focus as well for Canadian trade. So many efforts from many different people.
And I think the Vice President, J.D. Vance, is going to be there as well.
Yes. So there'll still be, yes, we need to look inwards, but we also still need to remember that that's a relationship that needs to be fixed.
At the same time, it's also a political opportunity for some, right?
Absolutely, and not really surprising because that's what politicians do. They look for opportunity to politic. And I mean, if you look at we have an Ontario election because of what's going on with Donald Trump. It's at all levels. But at the federal level, you have the leaders, the parties, you have even the candidates vying to become the next Liberal leader, all sort of pivoting to this focus. And because obviously there's an opportunity, but also that is what people are asking of them to do. The Natural Resources Minister, Jonathan Wilkinson, was actually asked about what he thinks the ballot question will be at the next election. And he basically says it's going to be Trump. Have a listen.
This is going to be a different 4 years than I think we have experienced in the past, and the global community has experienced in the past. And we are going to need strong leadership on the part of the Prime Minister of Canada to ensure we navigate thoughtfully through this. And in that regard, I can't help but make the pitch that either Mark Carney or Chrystia Freeland, both of whom have enormous experience in negotiation and in business, I think compare enormously well to Mr. Poilievre.
Now, we all know that the Conservative leader, Pierre Poilievre, has been messaging quite a lot recently about what he would do in the face of dealing with the Trump administration as Prime Minister. But Jagmeet Singh, as we showed earlier, was also out today, leader of the NDP, and he talked a lot about how his focus, being the NDP, would be a focus on workers and making sure that whatever measures are put in place benefit workers. And then you have the leader of the Bloc Québécois, Yves-François Blanchet, also out today, saying, of course, and trying to remind people that, Quebec will also be hurt by any kind of tariffs that come from the U.S. And so saying that they're the voice of Quebecers and pushing that point. Have a listen.
We will have the opportunity to speak about lumberwood, about aluminum, about artificial intelligence, about aeronautics, about what makes us what we are, and nobody is speaking about what Quebec is but Bloc Québécois. We may be friends with anybody who intends to deal in a fair way, but somebody who wants to deal against us will pay a very heavy and long-lasting price.
Now, I mentioned that the candidates for Liberal leader, of course, have also been pivoting to this. Karina Gould was out today with a housing announcement about what she would do as Prime Minister and as leader when it comes to affordable housing. A very pressing issue, but that's not what the questions were that she faced. In fact, she was asked what she would do to get Canada to the target of 2% of GDP on defense spending, something that is also a priority for the Trump administration to see Canada do. And this is what she had to say in response.
And one of the ways that I'm going to help increase defense spending is by increasing the salaries of our Canadian Armed Forces personnel. Our CAF members are there for us in our time of greatest need. In COVID, in this city, when long-term care facilities were strained and were unable to contain their outbreaks, who went in? Our CAF personnel. When there are natural disasters around this country, who is on the front lines? Our CAF personnel. We do not pay them sufficiently for the incredible service and work that they do.
So she also talked about creating a position of a procurement czar. I don't know how this would be different than the procurement minister that is already in cabinet, but to specifically deal with defense procurement, which Canada has a very long history of not doing very well, or certainly very quickly. So that was another plank in her defense platform. And again, this being the opportunity for leaders, candidates, to position themselves on how they would deal with what is not just a crisis now, but Trump will be 4 years of that administration that Canada and whoever is leading the country will have to deal with.
Karina, thank you. That is the CBC's Karina Roman live in Ottawa.